Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, At Home with Willowberry. Or if you're new, welcome. But where have you been? I'm so happy to see you here. My name is Valerie, and in today's video, we're getting outside to take care of a few outdoor chores here on our little homestead up in the Virginia mountains. So if you'd like to see what we've been up to, then I hope you'll stick around and enjoy the video. How are you all doing today? I sure hope you're feeling happy, healthy, and loved wherever you are in this great big world. We're doing great. We're really enjoying getting to spend some time outdoors this spring. It rained here yesterday, and it's a bit cloudy this morning, but the sun is supposed to come out this afternoon. With it being cloudy and overcast, you'd expect it to be cool out, but instead it's quite hot today. Well, the first thing we need to do this morning is to water our new baby fruit trees. We planted 3 peach trees and 3 plum trees, and we've been watering them faithfully each day. As soon as we finish up here in our little orchard, we plan to work down in the garden patch. We have some spring cleaning to do in the raised garden beds to get them ready to plant in, and we want to mulch the entire garden patch to help keep down the weeds. Later, once we finish up in the garden patch, I need to tend to my flowers and feed the birds. It's going to be a busy day of outdoor chores, so if you're ready, let's get to work. As you can see, we fenced in our peach trees to protect them from the deer and other wildlife. We still need to fence in the plum trees, but thankfully, so far, nothing seems to be messing with them. I guess the deer haven't found them yet, but we do need to get the plum trees fenced in sooner than later. We're actually going to get the boys to do it for us. Tim drove all the stakes in the ground for the first 3 trees, and by the time he was finished, he said his arms felt like spaghetti. When we fenced in the trees, we decided to make it so that we could easily open the fence in order to be able to water the trees, and it seems to be working out perfectly. I am so excited for the day the trees start producing fruit, but we're looking at anywhere between 2 to 5 years before they do start producing. But that's okay, it will still be fun watching the trees grow. Well, once we finish watering the fruit trees, we're going to head back up to the house. We need to pick up all the bags of garden soil and cow manure that we need to replenish our raised garden beds. We're excited to get ready to start planting some vegetables, but we have some cleaning up to do in the garden patch before we can start planting. We have some weeds to pull, and we need to add more soil first. But we also want to put down some weed barrier so that we can mulch the whole garden patch to help keep the weeds down. So that's what we're going to do next. I have already spent some time out here weeding the raised garden beds, so now I just need to clean up my mess. I also have already put weed barrier down and mulched around the garden beds. Today I want to finish mulching the rest of the ground here in the garden patch. Well, it looks like we had a couple of collard plants that continued to grow throughout the winter. We're going to go ahead and pull them up so that we can add more soil to the beds. The collards won't go to waste. We plan to give them to our neighbors so they can feed it to their rabbits and chickens. Speaking of chickens, the neighbors have let their chickens out of the coop for the day to do some free ranging to look for bugs. Some of them have found us here in the garden and are keeping us company. When Tim pulled up the collards, there were a bunch of little roly-polies, so Tim caught one of the chickens and put her up in the garden bed to eat the bugs. It was so cute to watch, and it makes me even more excited for our little baby chicks to arrive. Unfortunately, I won't be here when they're due to be shipped out. I'm taking the boys to Tennessee for spring break, so Tim will be on baby chick duty for the whole week that we'll be gone. I tell you what, I was so disappointed last year when the deer destroyed all the vegetables we had growing in the garden. I was so disappointed that I wasn't even planning to plant anything this year. But Tim has assured me that he has a plan to keep the deer out of the garden beds. And once spring arrived, I was bit by the garden bug. So here we are, sprucing up the garden patch. I didn't start any seedlings this year. I plan on buying seedlings from Lowe's and Home Depot. So the sooner we get the garden back in shape, the sooner we can start planting. Special treat. Some roly-polies. That chicken really had a good time eating up all the bugs here in the garden bed, but now we're ready to add more soil, so I'm going to try to catch her and send her on her way. Alright, well once we finish sprucing up the garden beds, I need to go tackle some weeds where we plan to plant watermelon, squash, and tomato plants. Once I get the weeds taken care of, I plan to lay down some weed barrier, and then Tim will start bringing me buckets of mulch to spread throughout the garden patch. Last year we planted watermelons there in those tires, and we plan to do that again this year. Well, when the watermelon vines started spreading out, they were surrounded by weeds. Well, I'm hoping that by laying down weed barrier and mulch around the tires, that we won't have that problem again this year. Tim tilled up a lot of the weeds, but there are still a few left for me to get rid of, so that's what I'm working on now before I lay down the weed barrier. This year I'm hoping to plant some watermelon, some squash, and tomatoes in the ground, and then up in the garden beds I want to plant cabbage, onions, cucumbers, and collards. Last year I planted 2 vegetables per garden bed, but this year I want to fill each bed with just 1 veggie. Alright, well I'm just going to go ahead and continue digging up all these weeds, and then I'll be ready to put down the weed barrier. mulched around the garden beds? Well, I kind of thought that was all we were going to mulch. But then Tim suggested we should just go ahead and mulch the whole garden area. We plan to plant the tomato plants here in this area that I'm working on now. We plan to just cut holes through the weed barrier and plant the tomatoes in the ground. I'm curious, what do you all plan on planting in your gardens this year? This tractor has really been a lifesaver. We've gotten a lot of work finished with it, such as digging up tree stumps, leveling out the driveway, and digging holes for the fruit trees. Imagine having to shovel by hand all the mulch that's needed to cover the ground here in the garden patch. Well, that was the plan before Tim rented the tractor. I tell you what, it feels so good to be outside working in the garden patch after being cooped up inside all winter. I've had the best time planting flowers, planting fruit trees, and now working in my garden. I love being outside working hard towards making our dreams of having a little homestead come true. Alright, y'all, the garden is all ready for planting, and I can't wait to get started. Well, now that spring is here and the trees are full of birds, I expect to start seeing little hummingbirds any day now. So I want to go ahead and fill up their feeders. I made the hummingbird food by mixing 1 part sugar to 4 parts water, and I have 2 feeders to fill, so that's what I'm doing now, and then I'll fill up the bird feeder with bird seed. I love flowers. They are one of my most favorite things, and I enjoy planting them all around outside the house. I can't wait to be able to put in some flower beds so that I can start planting perennials, but in the meantime, I really enjoy picking out different annuals to fill my planters with each year. Alright, well, it's time to water my flowers. Alright, y'all, I guess that's about it for another video. Thank you so much for visiting with me today. It sure does mean the world to me. Well, y'all, it's time to go for now, but I'll be back again real soon. I sure hope you all have a great week, and I'll talk with you again in my next video. Bye, y'all.